Now let's take a closer look in this Avishnapti. You can also call it the unmanifest or non-informative in English. According to Savastivada, this non-informative or unmanifest, it mainly refers to the pratimoksha discipline and the indiscipline and the neither discipline nor indiscipline. Of course, we will explain these in details in chapter 4. But why named so? Why does this factor get the name avijnapti or non-informative? Because, well, unlike, for example, unlike the bodily actions or the vocal actions, like when people say something or when they do something, it is relatively easy to get their intentions from their behavior or their words. However, it is impossible. For example, like a monk, it is or when someone, it is impossible to know their attention, to know that they are ordained, to know their kind of discipline just by what they say or what they do. This kind of things, they are not visible. You cannot see it. You cannot feel it. It's non-informative. You cannot detect it from the outside, from their behaviors or words. That's why they are called non-informative. And this is a very important concept for the Savastivada school, because it's important for them to establish their whole theoretical system. But we will get to know that maybe more during the progress of this course. But now let's talk about some characteristics, some properties of this non-informative factor. First, this avijnapti, they exists also in a person whose mind is distracted. What does that mean? It means, well, let's give you an example. An ordained monk, he has this pratimoksha discipline, this kind of unmanifest factor in his continuum. When he is not focusing on the discipline himself, when he's not, for example, when he's just walking randomly across the street, or when he's just go shopping in a big shopping mall, when he's kind of distracted from that discipline, and the discipline will not disappear, it is still there. Or, for example, if a butcher, if someone who slaughters animals, he may have this indiscipline. And when he's distracted, let's say when he goes shopping with his wife, or when he's visiting a temple or whatever, so he's distracted from what he usually does, like killing animals. Still, that kind of indiscipline still exists. It will not disappear automatically. So it is important for us to be aware that the word distracted actually may have different meaning depending on what kind of unmanifest, what kind of avijnapti one has. For good avijnapti, being distracted means that this person is in a bad or non-defined mind or mental states. And that is a distraction as compared to the good discipline. And for a bad unmanifest, or for a bad non-informative factor, the distraction is actually a good or non-defined mind or mental events. And when we say that it exists also in a person whose mind is distracted, Of course, it exists when when his mind or her mind is not distracted. This is needless to say. So this is the first property of avijñapti. The second one is it exists also in a person who is temporarily without mind. Well, in Buddhism, when we say someone is without mind, we actually, in many cases, we specifically refer to the non-conception samapati or the cessation samapati, because these two samapatis, these two kinds of meditative attainments, they are a status without functioning mind or mental events. So even when someone, for example, is practicing and they have obtained this non-conception or cessation samapati, during that period of without mind, if he has obtained this pratimoksha discipline or the bad indiscipline, they will not disappear. They will not disappear automatically, no. So this is the second characteristic of non-informative. The third one is that it exists when there is a serial continuity. What it really means is that as long as there is no direct counteracts, there's no antidotes that comes to destroy this avijñapti, to put an end to this non-informative, then it will remain, it will maintain, it will continue to exist. For example, again, an ordained monk, he has this good discipline, this pratimoksha, and he has this non-informative, of course. As long as he is still alive, his life is still is not going to the end, and he has not abandoned his discipline, or he has not destroyed his discipline somehow, then this discipline, this avijñapti, will continue to exist. Of course, likewise to a butcher with the bad indiscipline. The next property is that this non-informative is either good or bad. It can never be non-defined. And the reason for that is a non-defined mind and mental events is not powerful enough to trigger or to initiate the production of this non-informative factor. It's not powerful enough. And the last characteristic is that the avijñapti is made from the primary elements, from the four elements that we know as the earth, the water, the fire, and the wind. So when a monk gets ordained, he will have this non-informative fact produced in his body with the earth, water, fire, and wind, with these four elements, primary elements in his body. Okay, this is the properties on avijñapti. Since we have mentioned the four primary elements which produce the non-informative, so let's take a closer look. Why they are called the primary elements? First, let's check the basic properties. Because in general, the earth, water, fire, and wind, they can maintain their self-nature and that of the produced forms. So together, these four, they're combined and named the primary elements. And specifically, if we look at them one by one, that they form all rupas, such as the internal materials like the body and external materials like the mountains, rivers, and lands, and so on. But if we look at them one by one, we see that the intrinsic nature for earth is solidity, and that of water is liquidity. The intrinsic nature of fire is heat, and of wind is motion. So what can they do? That's about their functions. So the function of the earth as a primary element is to support. It's like it's like, for example, in a wood plate, the earth elements in that wood plate will help to hold the shape and strength of that wood plate. And the water element in that water element has a function to cohere factors together. It's like a bowl of flour powders, the flour powders to make bread, that kind of flour powders. If if you don't mix water with them and with some wind, they will just go everywhere. But if you add water and mix the flour with water, they will cohere together. That's the function of the water element. And the fire element has a function to ripen. For example, for the plant growing in sunshine, and or during the cooking when we cook some food, or also for the digestion process in our body. You cannot do it without this fire element. And the function of the wind element is to expand. We can also think of the wind that intensifies a flame. So with the presence of the wind element in that wind, it will intensify a flame. It will also, for example, our breathing process facilitates the circulation of the air and blood in our body. It also it cannot be done without the function of the wind element. So these four are the authentic four primary elements. But in our daily life, we also use these four words. We also say earth, water, fire, and wind like every day. So it is very important to be aware that the authentic four primary elements, as mentioned in the text, in the scripture of Buddhism, has totally different meaning as these four words we say every day. Because these four authentic elements, they are objects of the sense faculty of our body. But as we mentioned earlier, right? These four primary elements, they are tangibles. And tangibles, they are apprehended by our body. But in daily life, when we say these four words, they're actually the objects of our eyes. We see them. We see the earth, the water, the fire, and the wind. For example, when we say there is a green playground or there is a blue ocean, we're actually talking about the colors. Or when we say there is a round field or there is a long river, we're talking about the shapes. When we say there is a red flame, there's a red flame, or there's a spiral, tornado, and so on. We're talking about color or shapes. So that's the big difference. And we should be aware of that. Next question is, why these four are called primary elements? According to Master Yuan Hui of China, there are three reasons to do so. First, they are universal over all produced material in the world. As long as it is a kind of material, they have these four elements. It's universally present in all material. And second, they are overwhelming in big accumulations. For example, you find overwhelming earth element in big mountains, and you find overwhelming water in the oceans. You find overwhelming fire in a big flame, and you find overwhelming wind in a tsunami, in typhoon or tornadoes. The third reason, you find overwhelming wind in tornadoes and typhoons. I just said tsunami, of course. Tsunami also has a strong wind accompanied. And The third reason is that these four, they bear powerful functions. For example, the earth element can bear the world, because all sentient beings and all the receptacle worlds, they reside on the earth layer. And the water element, they can, the fire, the fire element can ruin the first jhana, and the water element can ruin the second, and the wind element can ruin the third jhana. These we'll talk about in chapter 3 when it comes to the topic destruction of the great kalpa. But let's leave it for now. We just want to say that these four have very overwhelming and powerful functions. They have powerful functions, okay? So that's the three reasons why they're called primary elements. But then the next question is, what about other factors in like in our knowledge? Why they are not called primary element? Because, for example, some factors, they are, you can say that they are elements. They're like seeds. They can also produce some other things, but they're not primary. For example, the seeds of crops, the seeds of plants, like seeds of rice, it can produce rice, but it cannot produce other things. Like it cannot produce wheat, it cannot produce flour, it cannot produce vegetables or cars or whatever. So they are elements. They're like seeds, but they're not primary. They don't have this much prevailing. They don't have this overwhelming functions. And some other factors, you can say that maybe they are primary somehow, but they're not elements. They cannot produce anything. For example, space. Space, in a way, they are primary because of course, you find it everywhere. It's universally present in all places, but they cannot produce anything. So when we say some factors that are both primary and elements, it's these four. It's water, earth, fire, and wind. Okay, now we have a better understanding of these four elements. And we have already examined the first aggregate of the rupa, the forms. The next one is the aggregate of sensation. This is the second aggregate in the 5 aggregates. So sensation, it is threefold. It is either painful or pleasant or a neutral, meaning it's neither painful nor pleasant. These sensations, they arise from the contact by experiencing different objects. For example, when I say I have a headache, okay, first of all, of course, I have a contact, and then this painful sensation will arise with this headache. And if I see, for example, when I see beautiful views of maybe forests and the ocean and the beach and so on through my window, then very likely the pleasant sensation will arise. And if I look at the table or the laptop in front of me, very likely the neutral one, neither painful nor pleasant sensation will arise. So this is the aggregate of sensation. Next is the aggregate of conception. They are it's actually an apprehension of characteristics of various categories of different objects, like relatives, enemies, men, women, yellow, blue, and so on. They are of 6 types because the sources may come from different sense faculties. Like when your eyes see a close friend or an enemy, so will come the conception of a friend or an enemy. If your ears hear some sound, like very joyful music or some harsh words from other people, then this conception of beautiful music or harsh words will arise. And so on. So it is related, it can be related from 6 different sources, then it has 6 types according to the sense faculties. And the fourth aggregate is the aggregate of formations. To put it simple, all mental events except that of sensation and except that of conception, plus some dissociated factors, meaning factors that are not associated with mind or mental events. These altogether, as a group, are called the aggregate of formations. So how many do we have? Well, we will check the numbers later. But in short, we have 46 mental events minus sensation and minus conception. Then we have 44 mental events. We have 14 dissociated factors. So it's 44 plus 14. We have 58 factors that belong to the aggregate of formations. And what does the word formation mean? It means fabrication and momentary change in nature. Here comes a question, as proposed by Master Pu Guang in his commentary. The question is, obviously all 5 aggregates, they are fabrication and momentary change in nature, because these are all conditioned factors. Of course, they are rising and ceasing. They are of a momentary change all the time. But why only this aggregate of formations got the name of formations? A quick answer for that is that the other 4 include less factors. And this aggregate of formations, covers a lot more formations. As I just mentioned, they have 58 factors. So they got the overall name of formations. A quick explanation is like this. So now it comes to the last aggregate, the aggregate of consciousness. That's what we usually call the mind. In Chinese, we actually have another name for it. We call it the mind of the king. By saying that, we mean that the mind is like a king, and all the other mental events, including the sensation, conception, and the other 44, they're like those ministers and people who belong to the king. So let's check what this aggregate of consciousness is about. So by definition, it is that which perceives and is being aware of each object. Consciousness, or the mind. And when considered as a sense source, as ayatana, it is the sense source of the mental sense faculty, the mana ayatana. Or when considered as a sense element, as in the 18 dhatus, it actually corresponds to the 7 sense elements, namely the 6 consciousnesses from I to the body, plus the mental sense faculty, the manas, and we shall explain a little bit more here. So we already know the 6 consciousnesses arising from a reunion of the eye and its object, the visible form, or from the reunion of your ear with its object, the sound, and so on. But what is this number 7? This mental sense faculty, the manas? Well, it is not a distinct entity. It's very important to understand that it is not a separate, a distinct entity apart from the 6 consciousnesses. I'll give you an example. For example, in the first moment, in the first moment when our I consciousness arises, then the second moment, our mental consciousness will arise. So this is an immediate process. There's no stop in between these two. And right at the moment when the first moment is gone, when the visual consciousness, like our I consciousness is gone, and that is what we call the mental sense faculty is there. So there's no there is not a separate entity for that, for the mental sense faculty. It's more like a difference in past and now. So when the first moment I consciousness has passed, we just give it a name. We call it the mental sense faculty. And immediately in the next moment, when the mental consciousness arises, we call it the mental consciousness. We don't call it the mental sense faculty anymore. So in a way, we can say that the mental sense faculty is like an immediately preceding condition to the mental consciousness that arises right after it. So it's like a past and now, or it's like something that is producing and something that is produced. So this is very important to understand. Now let's see this diagram that shows us the correlation or how 5 skandhas and 12 ayatanas and 18 dhatus, how they correspond or correlate with each other. So this is also very important for us to understand. First, we see the 5 skandhas, the 5 aggregates. They are all conditioned factors. They have nothing to do with the three unconditioned factors, which are the space and the two sensations. And these 5 skandhas are from form to consciousness. And how do they correlate to the ayatanas and the dhatus can be seen here. The form skandha, it has 5 sense faculties, which corresponds to the sense sources from I, the body, in ayatanas. It also corresponds to the sense elements from I, the body, in the dhatus, in the 18 dhatus. And the 5 objects from the visual form to tangibles, that correspond to the sense sources from the visual form to tangible in the 12 ayatanas, and also it is the same as the sense elements from the visual form to tangible in the 18 dhatus. And within the form skandha, we also have the manifest or the avishnapti, and this avishnapti plus the aggregate of sensation and plus the aggregate of conception, then plus the aggregate of formations, as well as the 3 unconditioned. All these factors combined, they belong to the sense source of factors, as in the 12 ayatanas. And also is the sense element of factors in the 18 dhatus. So obviously the sense source of factors or the sense element of factors, they include the most factors. And then this consciousness, this aggregate of consciousness, as in 5 skandhas, it corresponds to the sense source of the mental sense faculty in the 12 ayatanas, and it also corresponds to the 7 mental sense elements, as in the 18 dhatus, which we have just explained that it is a group of the 6 consciousnesses plus the mental sense faculty, while the mental sense faculty is not an independent entity. Yep, that's how it is. And it is very important to know this correlation. Here is a practice for you. It is very good to think about this. And the question is, if I want you to select only one skandha, only one ayatana, and one dhatu, if I want you to make a selection of one of each, and they should cover all factors. So which skandha and which ayatana and which dhatu will you choose? We will find out the answer very soon. Before that, I would like to explain 3 angles for us to understand why Buddha taught these 3. Why Buddha taught 5 skandhas and 12 ayatanas and 18 dhatus, as obviously they are overlapping in a way, and they're correlated closely. So why Buddha taught these 3 separately? Well, there are at least 3 angles for us to understand. First, Buddha taught these 3 to destroy 3 kinds of misunderstandings or ignorance. For those people who cannot separate, the first one, for those who cannot separate mind from mental events, Buddha taught the 5 skandhas. Then people see, oh, okay, beside the mind, beside the consciousness, we also have sensation, we also have conception, we also have many other mental events. So now they could understand the difference between the mind and mental events. And for those who cannot separate the form skandha, they think material is material, all materials are just the same. Then Buddha taught them the 12 ayatanas, so they get more details. Now they know, okay, the form includes actually 5 sense faculties, 5 objects, and also the unmanifest. This vijnapti. This is a second kind. And for those who cannot separate form from consciousness, which is how to say, for example, some people they think that when people die, their body, their consciousness, whatever, as combined, just combined as one, will disappear, will be destroyed, will be gone forever. Yeah, and for this kind of views, they don't really separate the form from the consciousness. They think it's just one, and it will be disappear at the same time, and it will disappear and it will be gone at the same time when people die. So Buddha would teach them the 18 Dhatus. Then they would get more details of the difference between the form and the mind and the mental events and the consciousness and so on. So yeah, this is the first angle for us to understand why Buddha taught us the 5 skandhas, 12 ayatanas, and 18 dhatus. The second angle to understand such a teaching is that it was to adapt to 3 levels of good roots. Because for people, for example, some people, they have good roots that are sharp, that are strong. Then maybe it is already necessary. It is already enough to teach them about the 5 skandhas. Then immediately they will understand, okay, the so-called me that I have been attached to for a long time is actually consisting of 5 elements, 5 components. And there can never be 5 me. So the so-called me is just a name. It's an illusion. It doesn't really exist. Then they got a chance to be enlightened. It's enough for them. And for people with a medium level of good roots, it's good for them to know the 12 ayatanas. And for people with relatively weak good roots, maybe it's a good idea for them to learn the 18 dhatus, so they get enough details, then they can use it to reflect during, for example, the meditation practices, until they realize that the so-called me or this world is not exactly the same as what they thought it would be. And the third angle to explain why Buddha taught this could be that it is to fit 3 types of inclination, because different people have different inclinations, different preferences. Some people, they prefer the Dharma, they prefer the teaching or presentation to be precise, to be concise, not too lengthy. Otherwise, they might lose their patience. For this kind of people, Buddha taught them the 5 skandhas. Concise. And for people who like extensive, very comprehensive presentation or speech or Dhamma teaching, Buddha taught them the 18 dhatus. So they have the chance to get into a lot more details, which would help them to meditate, to reflect about. And for people in between, not too concise, not too extensive, they just prefer some moderate, not too short, not too long, and then maybe 12 ayatanas is a good choice for them. In the end of this chapter, in the end of this lecture, I would show you this diagram, which I think is very, very important and fundamental. It's the 75 factors classified in 5 categories. It's the rupa, which includes 11, and the mind, which is the consciousness, and the mental events that include 46 different mental events. You can also find the sensation and conception, the 2 aggregates here. And we also have 14 dissociated elements and 3 unconditioned factors. Well, this is not an assignment or homework for you that you must remember it, but I do hope that you could try to remember as much as you can, because that would really help in a later time when you read text or scripture of Buddhism. Then it would be much easier for you to recall the concepts, which category it belongs to in this diagram. It will really help you. And from this diagram, we can also see that the 5 skandhas, the 5 aggregates, they include 72 factors, as they are only, and all of them are conditioned factors, so they don't include the 3 unconditioned factors. So it has 72 factors. And the 12 ayatanas and 18 dhatus, they include all factors, 75. Now let's come back to the question I just proposed a bit earlier. If I want you to select 1 skandha, 1 ayatana, and 1 dhatu to cover all these 75 factors, which 3 would you choose? Have you got an answer? In this case, we can choose first the form skandha, and that covers all rupa factors, the 11 factors on the top. And then next we can choose the sense source of the mental sense faculty. We can choose this ayatana. It is the mind. Then we select the sense element of factors. We select this dhatu. It includes all the mental events, all the dissociated elements, and all the 3 unconditioned factors. So if we plus them together, we get 11 plus 1, and plus, because the dhatu of factors, or the dhamma dhatu, or the sense element of factors, it contains 64. Yeah, because it contains the mental events, the dissociated elements, the 3 unconditioned, plus the unmanifest. So 11 plus 1 plus 64, that's 76. But remember, the avishnapti, this unmanifest, has been repeated once. It has repeated in the rupa and in the dhammadhatu, so we have to minus 1, considering the repeated avishnapti. Then we get 75 factors. So that's a very good training in understanding this diagram. Okay, so far we have investigated into the form, the mind, the 2 mental events, namely the 2 aggregates of conception and sensation. We have also discussed the 3 unconditioned factors in our very first lecture. So we shall examine the other 44 mental events, as you can see here, and the 14 dissociated elements in more details in chapter 2. In chapter 2. So this is for this lecture. In the next lecture, we will continue with chapter 1, and we will analyze the 18 dhatus from different angles. We will analyze different properties and different categories of factors. Yeah. So that is for now.